What the hell? Why is this black woman sitting in first class?
The captain blocked the boarding gate. His eyes were full of judgment.
Sir, this is my ticket, seat 2A.
He ignored her.
I don't care. Seat pay. First class passengers pay for comfort, not to sit next to someone who smells bad and soils the seat.
Sir, I pay like everyone else.
You? Can you afford this? The captain? Humiliate. People like you are only good at stealing.
He snatched her handbag and threw it onto the concrete floor. The zipper burst open. Clothes scattered everywhere.
Get out. Filthy.
She knelt down, silently gathering her belongings. Her hands clenched. Then, quick footsteps. The
Captain,
co-pilot ran
that's
up,
Olivia Grant.
his face pale. He said something that instantly wiped the co-pilot's smile. He realized what he had just done had ruined 22 years of his career. Let me take you back to the beginning. 3 hours before that moment at the gate, Olivia Grant was standing barefoot in her kitchen in Buckhead, Atlanta. The morning sun cut through the blinds. The smell of fresh coffee filled the room. Her 17-year-old daughter, Maya, sat at the counter doing homework. "Mom, do you really have to fly out tonight?" Olivia smiled. She poured 2 cups, one black, one with too much cream, exactly the way Maya liked it. "Just a quick trip to DC, baby. Back Sunday." "You always say quick." Olivia kissed her forehead. "This time, I mean it." She didn't mention why she was flying. She never did. 4 times a year, Olivia boarded one of her own airline's flights, dressed as an ordinary passenger. No uniform, no badge, no entourage. Just jeans, sneakers, and a leather weekender bag she'd owned for 15 years. She called them ghost rides. The company called them quality assurance inspections. Either way, the purpose was simple. See how the airline actually treated its passengers when no one important was watching. Olivia Grant was the vice president of flight operations at Continental Atlantic Airlines. Every pilot, every flight attendant, every ground crew member answered to her chain of command. She controlled routes, schedules, crew assignments, and disciplinary reviews. But tonight, she was just a woman in a window seat. She ordered a rideshare to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. No private car, no driver holding a sign. She walked through the automatic doors at Terminal B with her bag over one shoulder and her phone in her hand. The airport was chaos. It was a Friday evening in late July. Half the departure board glowed yellow with delays. Families sprawled across terminal floors. A baby screamed somewhere near gate B14. The air conditioning struggled against the Georgia heat, and the whole terminal smelled like fast food and recycled air. Olivia moved through TSA pre-check in under 4 minutes. She bought a black coffee from a kiosk near gate B19. She thanked the barista by name. She always read name tags. Then she found a seat near gate B22 and settled in. Continental Atlantic Flight 1843 to Washington, D.C. Departure, 7:45 p.m. First class, seat 2A. She pulled out her phone. 14 unread emails from her executive team. A budget proposal from the operations director. A message from the head of crew training about new safety protocols. She scrolled through them quietly, sipping her coffee. Then a text from Maya. "Bring me something from DC. Love you." She typed back a heart emoji and slipped her phone into her pocket. At gate B22, things were falling apart. 3 connecting flights had been delayed. Passengers were being rebooked left and right. The gate agent, a woman named Brenda Taylor, was handling it alone. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Her voice stayed calm, even as a man in a business suit shouted at her about missing his connection. "Sir, I understand your frustration. Let me see what I can do." Brenda was good at her job. 11 years with the airline. She knew how to absorb anger without breaking. Olivia watched her from across the waiting area. She made a mental note. This agent deserves recognition. Then she heard him before she saw him. Heavy footsteps on the polished floor. The sharp click of dress shoes walking too fast. A voice barking into a phone. "I don't care what Atlanta operations says. I'm the captain. My call." Captain Derek Sullivan. He appeared from the crew corridor in full uniform. 4 gold stripes on each shoulder. Aviator sunglasses pushed up on his forehead. Indoors. His jaw set hard. His chest out like he was walking onto a stage. He passed a young gate agent struggling with a printer jam. Didn't stop. He brushed past a mother pulling 2 rolling suitcases and a stroller. Didn't acknowledge her. He reached the B-22 podium, dropped his flight bag on the counter, and looked at Brenda like she owed him something. "Is my aircraft clean yet?" "Almost ready, Captain. 5 more minutes." He exhaled through his nose. "This airline is falling apart." Brenda said nothing. She had seen his type before. 22 years of seniority, 3 HR complaints that went nowhere. A man who believed the uniform made him untouchable. Olivia watched all of this from her seat. She uncapped a pen and opened her leather notebook. She wrote one word. Sullivan. Boarding started at 7:15 p.m. Brenda Taylor picked up the intercom. Her voice cut through the noise of the terminal. Calm, practiced, professional. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are now boarding Continental Atlantic Flight 1843 to Washington, D.C. First class and priority passengers, please proceed to the gate at this time." Olivia closed her notebook. She slid it into her bag, stood up, and joined the first-class line. 6 passengers ahead of her. Business suits, leather briefcases. The smell of expensive cologne mixed with airport whiskey drifted through the warm air. Nobody looked at her twice. She reached the podium. Brenda scanned her pass. The screen beeped green. "You're all set, ma'am. Seat 2A. Enjoy your flight." "Thank you, Brenda." She walked toward the jet bridge. That's when Sullivan appeared. He stepped out from the crew corridor and planted himself directly in front of the jet bridge entrance. One hand flat against the wall, his body filling the gap completely. His 4 gold stripes caught the harsh fluorescent light overhead. "Hold on," Olivia stopped. "I need to verify your boarding credentials before you step onto my aircraft." She held up her pass. "I just scanned through. The gate agent cleared me." He didn't look at the pass. He looked at her sneakers, her jeans, her blouse. Then slowly, deliberately, back at her face. "I don't care what the gate agent did. I'm the captain. Nothing boards my plane without my personal approval." He paused. Let the silence stretch until it hurt. Especially when something doesn't look right. The word something landed like a slap across the face. A businessman behind Olivia shifted his weight. A woman clutching a rolling bag suddenly became fascinated by her phone screen. The terminal noise seemed to shrink around them. Nobody spoke. Sullivan snatched the boarding pass out of Olivia's hand. Didn't ask. Didn't reach politely. He took it the way you'd take a piece of trash off a table. He walked it back to the podium and slapped it on the counter. "Brenda, run this again." Brenda blinked. "Captain, I already scanned." "Did I stutter?" "Run it. Again." She did. The screen beeped green. "Confirmed, Captain. First class, seat 2A, Fully paid. Sullivan stared at the screen for 3 long seconds. His jaw worked side to side like he was chewing something bitter. Then he turned back to Olivia, who hadn't moved a single inch. "Where did you get this ticket?" "I bought it online, 3 weeks ago." "With whose money?" The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Olivia felt the heat rise behind her eyes. Not tears, not rage. Something deeper. Something ancient. Something she had carried since she was 12 years old, walking through a department store with her mother while the security guard shadowed them through every single aisle. "With my own money, sir." Sullivan's jaw tightened. He wasn't satisfied. He was never going to be satisfied, because the answer was never the problem. Her presence was the problem. "Show me a government-issued ID." "That's not required for domestic boarding after clearing TSA." "I'm not asking what TSA requires." He stepped closer, close enough for her to smell the stale coffee on his breath, close enough for her to see the red veins crawling through the whites of his eyes. "I decide who gets on this plane. And right now, I don't like what I see." The line behind them had frozen solid. 9 passengers. A family with 2 small children clinging to their father's legs. An elderly man leaning hard on a wooden cane. A college girl with headphones around her neck, lips slightly parted. All watching. None moving. Nobody said a word. Olivia reached into her bag, slowly. She pulled out her driver's license and held it up, not handing it to him, just displaying it. "Olivia Grant, Georgia license. May I board now?" He glanced at the ID, the way someone inspects a counterfeit bill under bad light. Olivia Grant. He repeated it like the name left a sour taste on his tongue. "Never heard of you." "You don't need to know who I am to let me board a flight I paid for." Something shifted behind his eyes. Not shame, not hesitation. Irritation. The cold irritation of a man whose authority had never once been questioned, and certainly not by someone who looked like her. He turned to the passengers behind Olivia. His whole demeanor changed instantly. Warm smile, open palms, a completely different man. "Folks, apologies for the holdup. Routine security check. You understand how it is." He waved them through, one by one. The businessman, the old man, the college girl. Each of them walked past Olivia without making eye contact. Every single one stared at the ground as they passed her. Every single one of them was white. When the line cleared, Sullivan turned back. Just the 2 of them now. And Brenda behind the podium, knuckles white against the counter edge, barely breathing. "You're still standing here." "I'm still waiting to board my flight, sir." He exhaled, a long, heavy, disgusted breath through his nose. Then his eyes dropped to her bag, the worn leather weekender on her shoulder. "That bag is oversized." "It's the same dimensions as the bag the gentleman ahead of me carried on." "His bag passed my inspection. Yours doesn't." He extended his hand, palm up. "Give it to me. It's getting gate checked." "I'd prefer to carry it on." "I'm not asking your preference." He grabbed the strap and yanked it. Olivia held on for half a second, pure reflex, then released. She would not let this become physical. She would not hand him that weapon. Sullivan lifted the bag by one strap. He turned toward the gate desk. Then he threw it. Not dropped, not placed. Threw. The bag hit the concrete with a hard, flat crack that echoed across the entire gate area. The front zipper burst open. A silk scarf tumbled out onto the filthy tile. A phone charger cord skidded 3 feet. A small framed photo of Olivia and Maya landed face down on the dirty airport floor. The sound stopped conversations 30 feet away. Brenda gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Captain, you can't." "I can do whatever I want on my aircraft." He didn't even turn around. "Tag it. Gate check it. Get it away from me." Olivia looked at her things scattered across the floor. The scarf her mother gave her on her 40th birthday. The photo she carried on every single flight. A pair of reading glasses tangled in the charger cord. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice even slightly. She walked over, knelt down, picked up each item one by one, folded the scarf carefully, wiped the photo frame clean with her thumb, tucked the glasses into the side pocket. She zipped the bag shut, what remained of the zipper, and stood. Brenda's eyes glistened. She leaned close and whispered, voice trembling. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's gotten into him. I'm truly sorry." Olivia rested her hand gently on Brenda's arm. "Just for a moment. It's not your fault. Thank you for doing your job well." Then she turned and walked down the jet bridge, back straight, chin level, bag over her shoulder. Behind her, in row 3 of the waiting area, a woman slowly lowered her phone. Claire Anderson, 52 years old, retired schoolteacher from Savannah. She had been recording since the moment Sullivan first blocked the entrance. 4 minutes and 38 seconds of footage. She didn't post it. Not yet. She pressed save and whispered under her breath, "Lord have mercy." Olivia stepped into the aircraft. The flight attendant at the door, a young woman named Sarah, greeted her with a gentle smile. "Welcome aboard, ma'am. Can I help you find your seat?" "I'm fine. 2A, thank you." She walked down the narrow aisle. First class. 4 rows. 8 cream leather seats. Warm amber lighting hummed above. The low vibration of the auxiliary power unit pulsed through the cabin floor beneath her feet. She placed her bag under the seat in front of her, not the overhead bin. She would not give Sullivan another excuse. Not one. She sat down, buckled her seatbelt, pulled out the leather notebook and uncapped her pen. And she began to write. Date, time, flight number, gate, captain's full name, every word he spoke, every action he took, every witness she could identify, the sharp crack of her bag hitting concrete, the photo of her daughter lying face down on a dirty airport floor. 2 full pages, handwriting steady, neat, perfectly controlled. A flight attendant offered her a glass of water. She accepted with a nod. "Thank you." She took one slow sip, turned toward the window. Outside, the Georgia sun was sinking below the horizon. The sky bled deep orange and purple. Runway lights flickered on, one by one, like a city waking up in reverse. Olivia closed her eyes, held them shut for 3 seconds. Then she opened them, picked up her pen, and kept writing. Sullivan entered the cockpit 4 minutes before pushback. He dropped into the left seat hard enough to make the frame creak. He yanked his headset on, adjusted the mic, and stared straight ahead at the instrument panel without touching a single switch. His breathing was heavy. His knuckles were pale around the armrest. First Officer Nathan Cole was already seated on the right. Pre-flight checklist pulled up on the display. Hands steady on his kneeboard. He had been with Continental Atlantic for exactly 3 months, a transfer from a regional carrier out of Charlotte. Young, quiet. The kind of pilot who showed up early, spoke when spoken to, and kept his head down until he understood the politics. He could feel Sullivan's energy before the man said a word. It radiated off him like heat from an open furnace. Something had happened at the gate. Something that had Sullivan wound tight enough to snap. Cole kept his eyes on his checklist. He didn't ask. Sullivan broke the silence himself. "You see what I had to deal with out there?" Cole glanced over. "Sir?" "Some black woman trying to push her way into first class like she owned the damn plane." Sullivan shook his head slowly, jaw grinding. "Had to pull her aside myself. Gate crew's completely useless. They'll let anybody through these days. Anybody." Cole said nothing. His pen stopped moving on the kneeboard. "These people." Sullivan's voice dropped lower, thicker, like he was sharing a dirty secret between men who understood each other. "Give them an inch, they take the whole cabin. I've been flying 22 years, Cole. 22 years, and every single time one of them shows up in first class, there's a problem. Every single time." Cole stared at his checklist. The words on the page blurred into meaningless shapes. He wanted to say something. He wanted to say a lot of things. But he was 3 months in, still on probation. Sullivan was the most senior captain in the entire Atlanta hub. One word from him could end Cole's career before it started. He swallowed hard and said, "Copy, Captain. Pre-flight checklist is complete." Sullivan grunted. He reached for the overhead panel and started flipping switches with practiced aggression. The conversation was over. For him. For Cole, it was just beginning, to rot inside his chest like something he'd swallowed that wouldn't go down. The cabin door closed at 7:38 p.m. 2 minutes later, Sullivan unbuckled his harness and stood up. "Going to greet the cabin." Cole frowned. "We're about to push, Captain." "It'll take 2 minutes. Relax." Sullivan stepped out of the cockpit and into the first-class cabin. 8 seats, 7 passengers. The warm amber lighting made everything look golden and expensive. A small, pressurized world designed for people who could afford to be comfortable. He started at row 1. "Evening, sir. Welcome aboard. Captain Sullivan, thank you for flying with us tonight." Firm handshake, direct eye contact, wide, generous smile. Row 2, left side. A woman in a gray cashmere blazer. "Ma'am, pleasure to have you on board. Anything you need, you let me or my crew know personally." He moved down the aisle like a politician working a fundraiser dinner. Every passenger got a smile. Every passenger got a handshake. Every passenger got his name, his rank, his full attention. Every white passenger. When he reached seat 2A, he stopped. Olivia was sitting with her notebook open, pen in hand. She looked up at him. Her expression was neutral, patient, waiting. He looked through her. His eyes passed over her like she was an empty seat. Like the cream leather was unoccupied. Like the space she took up in this cabin simply did not register in his world. He turned to the passenger across the aisle, a man in a navy suit, and shook his hand with enthusiasm. "Great to have you with us tonight, sir. Enjoy the flight." Then he turned back toward the front of the cabin. 3 steps. He paused, turned around slowly. His eyes dropped to Olivia's bag, tucked neatly under the seat in front of her, exactly where she had placed it to avoid any further confrontation. "That bag." Olivia looked up. "It's protruding into the footspace. Move it, or I'll have a flight attendant remove it from the aircraft." "It's fully under the seat, sir. It's not blocking anything." A flight attendant, Sarah, stepped forward from the galley. She glanced at the bag, then at Sullivan, then back at the bag. Her voice was careful. Captain, the bag fits within regulation dimensions. It's not obstructing. I didn't ask for your opinion. Sullivan's voice snapped like a dry branch breaking underfoot. His eyes never left Olivia. I said it needs to move. Are you going to move it, or do I need to handle it myself? Because we both remember how that went last time. The threat filled the cabin like smoke. Heavy, suffocating, undeniable. Every passenger in first class heard it. The man in the navy suit turned to look out his window. The woman in cashmere studied her fingernails like they held the answers to something important. Sarah's face flushed crimson. She stepped backward into the galley without another word. Olivia held Sullivan's gaze for 2 full seconds. Steady, unblinking. Then she reached down, adjusted the bag 1 inch to the left, a completely meaningless gesture, and they both knew it, and returned to her notebook without a word. Sullivan smiled, that thin, sharp smile of a man who needed to win every exchange, no matter how small or how pathetic the victory. He walked back to the cockpit and closed the door behind him. Olivia wrote 1 line. Second confrontation. Cabin. Witnessed by flight attendant Sarah and approximately 6 first-class passengers. 90 seconds later, the PA system crackled to life. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Flight 1843 to Washington, D.C. Just a quick reminder. All passengers are expected to follow crew instructions immediately and without exception. We appreciate your cooperation in maintaining a safe and comfortable environment for everyone who belongs here. For everyone who belongs here. The words seeped through the cabin like slow poison. Every person in first class understood exactly who that message was meant for. The woman in cashmere shifted uncomfortably. The man in the navy suit cleared his throat and loosened his tie. In row 4, an older black couple, Harold and Jean, sat side by side. Harold's weathered hand found his wife's. Jean squeezed it without looking over. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes glistened behind her glasses. They didn't need to exchange a single word. They had heard announcements like that their entire lives. Different airplanes, different decades, different words. Same meaning. You are not welcome here. Olivia stared straight ahead. Her pen rested on the open page but didn't move. For the first time since this started, something cracked beneath the surface. Not her composure, that held firm, but something deeper, something private and old, something that ached in a place she had spent years learning to protect. Her phone buzzed softly against her thigh. She pulled it out. A text from Maya. Safe flight, Mom. Bring me something cute from D.C. Love you so much. Olivia read it twice. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard for a long moment. She typed back, Love you more, baby. Always. She slipped the phone into her pocket and turned to the window. The runway lights stretched into the dark distance like a trail of small fires. The engines spooled louder. The aircraft pushed back from the gate with a low, heavy groan. Now let me tell you something about Derek Sullivan that he never wanted anyone to know. This was not the first time. 18 months earlier, a black businesswoman named Denise Crawford filed a formal complaint after Sullivan refused to let her hang her coat in the first-class closet. The same closet he opened personally for 3 white passengers before and after her. HR reviewed the complaint. Sullivan denied everything. Case closed. Inconclusive. 11 months earlier, a Latina flight attendant named Rosa Gutierrez reported that Sullivan told her, in front of the entire crew, that she should be serving tacos instead of first-class champagne. She filed a written report. The union intervened on Sullivan's behalf. He received a verbal counseling. No formal discipline. No paper trail. Nothing. 6 months earlier, another complaint. A black family, seated in first class. Sullivan questioned their tickets at the gate. Same routine, same suspicion, same quiet humiliation. The family never filed a formal report. They just never flew Continental Atlantic again. 3 complaints. 3 opportunities for the system to correct itself. 3 times the system chose to look the other direction. Sullivan wasn't just a bad captain. He was a pattern. A pattern the airline had decided again and again and again was easier to ignore than to fix. Until tonight. The aircraft reached cruising altitude. The seatbelt sign dinged off with a soft chime. The cabin lights dimmed to a quiet blue. Olivia turned to a fresh page in her notebook. She kept writing. 43 minutes into the flight, Nathan Cole unbuckled his harness. "Restroom break, Captain." Sullivan didn't look up. He was scanning weather data on the nav display, one hand resting on the throttle quadrant. "Make it quick." Cole stepped out of the cockpit. The narrow galley between the cockpit door and the first-class cabin smelled like reheated pasta and fresh coffee. Sarah was preparing the meal service, arranging small white plates on a silver tray. Cole nodded at her and turned left toward the lavatory. That's when he saw her. Seat 2A. The woman Sullivan had been ranting about since before pushback. She was sitting upright, legs crossed, pen in hand, writing steadily in a leather notebook. The overhead reading light cast a warm circle around her. Her face was calm, focused, completely unbothered. Cole glanced at her, a quick, passing look, the kind you give a stranger on a plane. Then his feet stopped. Something fired in the back of his brain. A flash of recognition so sudden it felt physical, like a hand grabbing the back of his neck. He knew that face. He had seen it before. Not on this plane, not at this airport. On a stage. 6 weeks ago. The Continental Atlantic Annual Leadership Summit at the Hilton in Charlotte. 800 employees, 3 keynote speakers. Cole had been seated in the 3rd row, close enough to read the name on the podium placard. The final speaker had walked out in a navy blazer. Confident, commanding. She spoke for 45 minutes without a single note. She talked about accountability, about the culture of silence that allowed bad behavior to survive inside organizations, about what it meant to lead with integrity when no one was watching. The room gave her a standing ovation. Her name was on every slide, on every handout, on the conference lanyard that Cole still had pinned to his bulletin board at home. Olivia Grant, Vice President of Flight Operations, Continental Atlantic Airlines. The woman in seat 2A. Cole's blood turned to ice water. He stood frozen in the aisle for 3 seconds, maybe 4, long enough for Sarah to notice. "Officer Cole, you okay?" He didn't answer. He turned around, walked past the galley, and pushed open the cockpit door. His legs felt like they were filled with wet sand. Every step took effort. He sat down, pulled his harness tight. His hands were trembling. He placed them flat on his thighs to keep them still. It didn't work. Sullivan noticed. "What's wrong with you? You look like you saw a ghost." Cole stared at the instrument panel. The altimeter, the airspeed indicator, the autopilot display. Numbers and dials he'd read 10,000 times. None of them registered. His mouth was dry. His heart hammered against his ribs so hard he was sure Sullivan could hear it. "Cole, talk to me. What happened?" Cole turned his head slowly. He looked at Sullivan, really looked at him for the first time all night. He saw the 4 gold stripes, the graying temples, the 22 years of seniority carved into every line on his face. He saw a man who had spent an entire evening humiliating a woman he didn't know, a woman who controlled his entire career. Cole swallowed. His throat clicked. "Captain." His voice came out barely above a whisper. "The woman in 2A. Sullivan frowned. "What about her?" "That's Olivia Grant." Silence. "She's the vice president of flight operations." The cockpit hummed. The engines droned. The autopilot clicked softly through a minor course correction. Sullivan didn't move. "She's our boss, Captain. She's everyone's boss." The color left Sullivan's face like someone had pulled a plug. It drained from his forehead down through his cheeks, leaving behind a gray, waxy mask that didn't look like skin anymore. His jaw went slack. His lips parted, but nothing came out. His hands, the same hands that had thrown Olivia's bag onto the concrete 2 hours ago, gripped the yoke so hard his knuckles turned bone white. "That's..." His voice cracked. "That can't be right. She was wearing jeans. She looked like..." "I sat in the 3rd row at the leadership summit." Cole's voice was flat now, steady. The steadiness of a man who understood exactly how deep the hole was. "She gave the keynote. 45 minutes. I know exactly who she is." Sullivan stared through the windshield at 38,000 feet of empty black sky. The lights of a city glowed far below, tiny, distant, unreachable. Like his career. "Cole." His voice was barely a breath. "Don't say anything, please. We can fix this. I'll talk to her when we land. I'll explain. I'll apologize. Just don't report this." Cole looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time all evening, Sullivan saw something in the younger man's eyes that terrified him more than any turbulence he'd ever flown through. It wasn't anger. It wasn't judgment. It was pity. "Captain," Cole said quietly. "She's been writing in a notebook since she sat down. She documented everything." Sullivan's grip on the yoke went limp. His hands slid down into his lap. His shoulders dropped. The man who had controlled every inch of this aircraft, every passenger, every crew member, every announcement, sat in his own cockpit and realized, with absolute crushing clarity, that he controlled nothing at all. The woman he had humiliated, insulted, and stripped of dignity in front of 50 people was the one person on this planet who could end him. And she had been taking notes the entire time. The flight landed at Washington Dulles at 9:51 p.m. The wheels hit the tarmac with a dull thud. The thrust reversers roared. The cabin lights brightened. Passengers stirred, reaching for phones, unbuckling seatbelts, pulling bags from overhead bins. In the cockpit, Sullivan sat motionless. He didn't reach for the PA to deliver his standard arrival announcement. He didn't unclip his harness. He didn't move. His hands rested in his lap like 2 dead things. The color hadn't returned to his face. Cole handled the after-landing checklist alone, calling out each item into silence. When the aircraft reached the gate and the jet bridge connected with a metallic clunk, Sullivan still hadn't spoken. Cole stood up. He paused at the cockpit door. "Captain, we're at the gate." Sullivan nodded once. A small, mechanical movement, like a man agreeing to walk toward his own execution. The cabin door opened. Passengers filed out. The man in the navy suit, the woman in cashmere. Harold and Jean from row 4, holding hands as they stepped into the jet bridge. Sarah stood at the door, smiling, thanking each one. Olivia was the last to leave. She stood, pulled her damaged bag from under the seat, straightened her blouse, walked up the aisle at the same pace she'd walked through TSA 3 hours ago. Calm, unhurried, completely in control. She stepped off the jet bridge and into the terminal. 2 people were waiting for her. They stood near the gate podium in dark suits, with Continental Atlantic ID badges clipped to their lapels. Corporate compliance. Olivia had texted them from seat 2A, somewhere over Virginia. A detailed summary, flight number, captain's name, and 3 words at the end. Full investigation. Immediately. She walked toward them. They shook hands. One of them, a tall man with a tablet, pulled up a document. Olivia spoke quietly, pointing at specific lines in her notebook. The other compliance officer listened, nodding, taking notes on his phone. That's when Sullivan appeared. He stepped off the jet bridge slowly, like a man walking through deep water. His uniform was wrinkled. His captain's hat was tucked under one arm. His eyes were bloodshot and rimmed with dark circles that hadn't been there 3 hours ago. He saw them immediately. Olivia, the 2 suits, the tablet, the notebook open on the podium counter. He stopped, stood there for 5 long seconds. The terminal buzzed around him, announcements, rolling luggage, distant laughter, but none of it reached him. He was sealed inside his own silence. Then he walked over. "Miss Grant." His voice cracked on the first syllable. I want to apologize. I didn't realize. I had no idea who you were. If I had known." Olivia turned to face him. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't narrow her eyes. She looked at him the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray, with precision, without emotion. "That's exactly the problem, Captain. You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat me with basic human respect." Sullivan's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Nothing came out. He stood in the middle of the terminal with his captain's hat under his arm, and absolutely nothing left to say. The taller compliance officer stepped forward. "Captain Derek Sullivan, effective immediately, you are suspended from all flight operations pending a formal investigation into your conduct on Flight 1843. Please surrender your crew badge and identification." Sullivan's hand shook as he unclipped his badge. He held it out like it weighed 50 pounds. The officer took it without a word. "Security will escort you from the terminal. You are not to contact any crew members involved in this matter. You will receive formal notification within 48 hours. 2 airport security officers appeared from the corridor. They flanked Sullivan on either side. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. He walked between them with his head down, his hat crushed against his ribs, his polished shoes clicking against the terminal floor. Each step smaller than the last. The passengers at the neighboring gate watched him pass. A few whispered. A few took photos. Most just stared. Within the hour, 3 sworn statements were filed. Nathan Cole wrote 4 pages. Every word Sullivan said in the cockpit, every word he said about Olivia, every word Cole wished he'd had the courage to challenge in the moment. Brenda Taylor gave her account over the phone from Atlanta. Her voice was steady. Her details were precise. And Claire Anderson emailed her video, 4 minutes and 38 seconds, to the compliance team before her connecting flight even boarded. The evidence was overwhelming. The machine had started turning. And this time, it wasn't turning away. The investigation began the next morning at 6 a.m. Patricia Moore, chief legal counsel for Continental Atlantic Airlines, arrived at the corporate headquarters in Dallas before the sun cleared the parking garage. She carried a black leather briefcase, a large coffee, and 26 years of legal experience that had taught her one thing above everything else. When the evidence is clean, move fast. By 7 a.m., she had Sullivan's complete personnel file spread across her conference table. Every performance review, every commendation, every complaint. She read each document twice. She highlighted dates. She circled names. She built a timeline on the whiteboard behind her desk. 3 prior complaints, 3 separate incidents, 3 different victims. All flagged, all reviewed, all buried under layers of bureaucratic language designed to make ugly things sound administrative. Inconclusive. Verbal counseling issued. No further action recommended. Moore stared at those phrases for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and made the first of 14 calls she would make that day. She started with the old complaints. Denise Crawford, the businesswoman Sullivan had denied access to the first-class coat closet 18 months ago. Moore called her personally. Crawford was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I've been waiting for this call for a year and a half." Rosa Gutierrez, the flight attendant Sullivan told to go serve tacos. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was shaking before Moore finished her first sentence. "I thought nobody would ever believe me," she said. Then the new witnesses came. Word had spread through the Continental Atlantic crew network overnight. 2 more flight attendants from the Atlanta hub came forward independently. One described Sullivan refusing to acknowledge a black first officer during a pre-flight briefing, pretending the man literally did not exist in the cockpit for an entire 3-hour flight. The other recalled Sullivan making a joke in the crew lounge about upgrading the cabin after a black family deplaned. A gate agent from the Charlotte hub submitted a written statement describing how Sullivan had berated her in front of passengers for assigning a black couple to a premium boarding group. "He told me I was ruining the airline's brand," she wrote. His exact words. 5 witnesses, 3 old, 2 new. All telling the same story. Different flights, different cities, different years. Same man, same hatred, same pattern. Moore compiled everything into a single file. 41 pages. She submitted it to the Executive Review Board by noon. The union responded within 2 hours. Sullivan's union representative, a veteran negotiator named Gary Brooks, requested an emergency meeting. He came prepared with procedural arguments, insufficient notice, failure to follow progressive discipline protocols, potential wrongful termination liability. Moore listened patiently. Then she opened her laptop and played Claire Anderson's video. 4 minutes and 38 seconds. The room went silent. Brooks watched Sullivan snatch the bag, watched it hit the concrete, watched the zipper burst, watched Olivia kneel on the dirty floor and pick up her belongings one by one, watched Sullivan stand over her like she was nothing. When the video ended, Moore closed the laptop gently. "This video has not been made public yet," she said. "But Ms. Anderson has informed us she intends to post it this evening. When she does, every news outlet in the country will have it by morning. The question isn't whether Captain Sullivan is terminated. The question is whether this union wants its name attached to defending him when that happens." Brooks closed his folder. He stood up. He left without another word. The union withdrew its objection by 3 p.m. That evening, Claire Anderson posted the video on social media with a single caption. "This is what happened on my flight last night. Watch the whole thing." Within 6 hours, it had 4 million views. By midnight, it had 11 million. The comment section became a wildfire. thousands of people sharing their own stories: passengers, flight attendants, gate agents, pilots, people who had been humiliated, dismissed, questioned, and degraded, and had never been given a reason to believe anyone was listening. By the next morning, every major news network in the country had picked up the story. Reporter James Wilson from the National Broadcasting Network broke the deepest coverage. His 12-minute segment included the full video, an interview with Claire Anderson, statements from 2 of the previous complainants, and an on-camera response from Continental Atlantic's CEO, a tight-lipped, carefully worded condemnation that used the phrases "zero tolerance" and "unacceptable conduct" 4 times each. Wilson closed his segment with a single line that would be quoted in newspapers for weeks. The question isn't why Captain Sullivan behaved this way. The question is why he was allowed to do it for 22 years. Continental Atlantic issued a formal press release the following afternoon. Captain Derek Sullivan was terminated, not only for the incident on Flight 1843, but for a sustained and documented pattern of racially discriminatory conduct spanning multiple years, multiple flights, and multiple victims. His termination was immediate, permanent, and without severance. The FAA announced a formal review of Sullivan's pilot certification and conduct record. If violations were confirmed, his license would be permanently revoked. 3 of Sullivan's previous victims retained attorneys. Civil lawsuits were expected within weeks, not just against Sullivan personally, but against Continental Atlantic for its failure to act on repeated warnings. And then Olivia spoke. She gave a single interview. 1 camera, 1 chair. No notes, no lawyers standing behind her. She didn't gloat. She didn't rage. She sat with her hands folded and spoke in the same quiet, steady voice she had used when she told Sullivan her ticket was valid. She talked about the passengers who came before her, the ones who had no title, no authority, no notebook full of evidence, the ones who were humiliated at the gate and had no choice but to sit down, shut up, and fly home in silence with the shame still burning on their skin. "I had the power to do something," she said. "Most people who experience this don't. That's not their failure. That's the system's failure. And systems don't fix themselves. People fix them, but only if they refuse to look away." 1 week later, Continental Atlantic announced a company-wide reform initiative. New mandatory bias training for all crew members. An independent oversight board for discrimination complaints. A zero-tolerance disciplinary policy with automatic escalation. No more verbal counseling. No more closed files. No more looking the other way. The program was developed and supervised by the Office of Flight Operations, Olivia Grant's office. So where are they now? Let me tell you. Olivia Grant still flies coach sometimes. She still shows up at gates in jeans and sneakers with that same leather weekender bag, the one with the broken zipper she never replaced. She kept it on purpose, a reminder. Not of what Sullivan did to her, but of what she did about it. Her quarterly undercover inspection program didn't just survive the scandal. It became the standard. Within a year, 3 other major airlines adopted the same model. Senior executives flying anonymously, evaluating how their people actually behaved when nobody important was watching. The industry press called it the Grant Protocol. Olivia never liked the name. She said it shouldn't take a vice president getting humiliated for an airline to treat its passengers like human beings. But the name stuck anyway. Nathan Cole made captain in 22 months, fastest promotion in Continental Atlantic's Atlanta hub in over a decade. Not because of the Sullivan incident, though it didn't hurt. Because he was a damn good pilot who understood something most people learn too late. Silence in the face of wrong isn't neutrality. It's permission. He told an interviewer once, that the hardest part wasn't what happened on Flight 1843. The hardest part was the 3 months before it. Every time he heard Sullivan say something ugly in the cockpit and said nothing back. Every time he swallowed the words and told himself it wasn't his place. "I'll never do that again," he said. "Not for any job. Not for any captain. Not for anything." Brenda Taylor received a formal commendation from Continental Atlantic's executive board for her professionalism during the gate incident. She was offered a promotion to lead gate supervisor at Hartsfield-Jackson. She accepted. On her first day, she pinned her new badge to her vest, looked at herself in the mirror, and cried. Not because she was proud, though she was. Because she kept thinking about every other passenger she'd watched get treated like Olivia, and how many times she'd wanted to say something but didn't. Now she trains new agents. First lesson, every time. You don't need to know who someone is to treat them with dignity. That's not a guideline. That's the job. Claire Anderson's video reached 62 million views. She never monetized it. She never did interviews for money. When reporters asked why she posted it, she said, "Because I was raised to believe that if you see something wrong and you have the ability to show the world, you don't put your phone away. You press record." And Derek Sullivan? He never flew again. His pilot's license was formally revoked by the FAA 4 months after the incident. He settled 2 of the 3 civil lawsuits out of court. The 3rd went to trial. He lost. Last anyone heard, he was working a desk job at a small regional logistics company outside of Tulsa. No uniform, no gold stripes, no cockpit. No passengers to greet or skip or humiliate. Just a gray desk in a gray office, answering to people who had no idea who he used to be. The airline industry didn't forget him, though. His name became a case study, taught in crew training programs at 6 different carriers. Not as a villain, as a warning. As proof of what happens when arrogance meets accountability and accountability wins. What would you have done if you were standing at that gate? Would you have stayed silent? Would you have spoken up? Would you have hit record like Claire? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear it. If this story hit you in the chest, smash that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because respect costs nothing. But disrespect? That bill always comes due.
And I think the lesson here is pretty clear. 1. Respect is not something you give based on who someone is. It is something you give because of who you are. The moment you decide someone deserves less because of how they look or where they sit, that says nothing about them. That says everything about you. 2. Silence is a choice and it's never neutral. When you see something wrong and you say nothing, you're not staying out of it. You're letting it happen. You're telling the person being hurt that they're on their own. And you're telling the person doing it that it's okay to keep going. 3. Power without character is dangerous. A title, a uniform, a position, none of that makes you a good person. It just makes you a louder one. And if the only thing keeping you in check is the fear of getting caught, it's only a matter of time. And 4. How you treat people when nobody important is watching. That's the truth of who you are. Not the handshake in the meeting, not the smile at the camera, not moment when you think no one's keeping score. That is your real face. So, let me ask you, Have you ever seen something wrong and stay silent? Or did you speak up? Tell me in the comments. If this one hit you, share it, like it, subscribe so you're here for the next one. And remember, respect costs nothing but the respect that bill always comes due.